Hey everyone. I want to share a clip with you from a recent interview. It's Winston Marshall interviewing Sam Harris. Now, Sam Harris is not someone I agree with on everything. He's a committed atheist. I'm a rabbi, so we obviously have some fundamental differences, but he's a serious thinker. And in this clip, he's grappling with something important: the alliance between progressive left and Islamist movements in America. Figures like Hassan Piker, Zoran Mamdani, Ilhan Omar, and the question of why the mainstream left keeps embracing them. Now, Harris gets close to something really important, but he doesn't quite connect the final dot. And that's what I want to do today, because the connection he's missing is something we've been talking about on this channel for a long time. So let's go ahead and watch this video. Here it is. This is Sam Harris being interviewed by Winston Marshall. Here we go.
Well, on the left, you have this ideology around power relations, and that all power on some level is corrupt and in the limit evil. And on the left, it's there's just direct ties historically to Marxism and socialism and other kind of ethics of redistribution and revolution, frankly, that are more radical. And the left, unlike the right, has captured mainstream institutions to a remarkable degree. So you have in recent months the New York Times not only platforming but really celebrating Hassan Piker as though he were the new face of progressive politics in America. They gave him a glowing profile in the style section. They gave him his own op-ed. Ezra Klein embraced him as, quote, not the enemy. He was on another podcast anchored by a New York Times writer with a New Yorker writer, and he and the New Yorker writer were agreeing that looting was now an ethical, micro looting was now an ethical strategy of protest. It's just steal from corporations that you think are too rich or that you don't like. This is obviously morally deranged. And you would not get the analogous right-coded derangement celebrated by any kind of mainstream news outlet, right? So,
all right, let's pause it there. So, Harris is identifying something very real. The left has a historically rooted ideology built on power relations, redistribution, revolution. Right? And he's right that it captured mainstream institutions to a remarkable degree. But notice what he hasn't said yet. He's describing the ideology from the outside, like what it looks like, what it does. He hasn't told you why it produces the alliances that it produces, this red-green alliance. Why does a movement built on progressive values, women's rights, gay rights, secularism, end up platforming and celebrating people who are allied with or apologetic towards Islamist movements that are the most hostile forces on earth to all those things? And that's the question that Harris is circling. And it's a longer interview. He circles it throughout the interview. But the answer to this question, as I've been arguing, is that both movements, both the Islamists and the Marxists, they share something more fundamental than their surface kind of pragmatic values, we'll call them. They share a framework. So, for example, one of the big ones, and this is a subtle point, and I explain it elsewhere, and I'll keep talking about it. Neither the secular left nor Islamists have a category for an objective good and evil that human beings can determine in any way on their own. Meaning, for the secular left, the postmodern secular left, there is no objective good and evil. And for Muslims, there kind of also isn't, because according to Islam, it's only what Allah wants and what Allah doesn't want. And the human being has no real moral compass that can determine good and evil. So in the end, both systems ask a question: are you for us or against us? Meaning, in Islam, are you for Allah or against Allah? That's the only determinant of what you might call good and evil. And the same thing is on the left. Are you on our side or not on our side? Anyway, once you see that, the alliance makes sense. Let's keep watching, and then I'll pause it again.
The fact that Hassan Piker is not recognized to be as odious as someone like Nick Fuentes, I mean, they're fairly interchangeable. I mean, but maybe not. Maybe Fuentes is got a little more topspin that makes them a little worse. But I mean, they're both kind of morally nuts, right? And they absolutely, contrary to what the original title of Ezra Klein's op-ed said, Hassan Piker absolutely is the enemy of any sane American politics, and certainly any viable future for the Democrats in America. So, I mean, the fact that he's being sane-washed by nothing less than the New York Times is a sign of how fully the rot has spread. And that's much more than, I mean, Trump doesn't help, but it's a much deeper problem than Trump.
But it's not entirely clear to me that that's what's going on at the moment. If you see, for example, Obama 2 weeks ago did a photo shoot with Mamdani. Mamdani to me seems pretty radically left. Obama very happy to be side by side with him. And likewise, the likes of Ilhan Omar and the squad, these are not people who are pushed aside by mainstream Democrats, or as far as I've interpreted it. Do you think I'm wrong?
No. And so the real error there is that the left has been successfully manipulated by Islamists and apologists for Islamists, and I mean, in certain cases this is a knowing alliance, and in certain cases just frank manipulation, and people on the left are morally confused.
Okay, let's pause it there again. So Harris makes an important distinction here that in some cases it's a knowing alliance and in some cases it's manipulation. He thinks that Piker and Mamdani know exactly what they're doing, that others on the left are morally confused. Remember, Piker and Mamdani are both Muslims and leftists, socialists. So I think Harris is right as far as it goes, but I want to push it further because Harris is still treating this as primarily a political phenomenon, a strategic alliance between groups that have found common cause against a common enemy. And that's all true, but it's not the deepest truth. You see, the deepest truth of this relationship is theological, or more precisely, you could call it anti-theological or philosophical. Both Marxist progressive ideology and Islamist political ideology are structured around the rejection of what I call biblical civilization, the civilization that says human beings have inherent dignity, that the individual has inherent dignity, that good and evil are real and objective, that power is accountable to a moral standard above itself. Marxism rejects that because it's atheist. So there's no transcendent moral standard if you're a Marxist. There is only power. Islamism rejects it because it insists that the only legitimate authority is Allah, and human beings have no standing to assess the values of a particular act or of a particular idea. They have no ability to make law or hold power accountable on their own term, on human terms. So they end up in the same place. So when Mamdani, as a Democratic Socialist of America socialist, and Islamist-aligned organizations like CARE, when they find themselves on the same side, it's not just strategy, it's that they're both operating in frameworks that are structurally hostile to the same thing, which is the concept of human liberty and objective morality and biblical Western civilization, meaning they're both hostile to those same concepts. They don't need to agree on the theology, but they agree on the enemy, and they also have a similar framework. They have a similar structure for how they see the world and how they see power, and therefore they're comfortable with each other. That's the point that I've been making. Oh, let's continue the clip. Let's go a little further here.
I'm not, I don't think someone like Hassan Piker is confused. I think he knows exactly what sort of alliance he has, and I think that's true of Mamdani too.
Do you think Mamdani is an Islamist?
Yeah, I mean, well, he is certainly an apologist for Islamists, right? He's just not, the fact that he's he can't quite figure out what's wrong with the phrase "globalize the Intifada," and that the worst he'll say of it is that he doesn't use that language, nor does he encourage it, but he's not going to condemn it, and then he's just so fixated on the Middle East, right? He's mayor of New York. And his main fixation is Israel and Palestine and Gaza, etc. one of the first things he did was change the definition of anti-Semitism. Erick Adams had kind of rammed that through as some kind of executive order at the mayoral level, and Mamdani changed it. Now, I don't necessarily agree with the definition of anti-Semitism that is being promulgated by Deborah Lipstadt and other people who are I forgot the name of it, but it's a very expansive conception of what it means to be anti-Semitic,
which shuts down conversation.
Yeah, and it seems to shut down, at least to my eyes, some conversation about what Israel is doing as a nation, and you're just going to criticizing Israeli politics. And
okay, this isn't exactly fair. Just as a side point, he's talking about the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, and in it, it says that that criticizing Israel, basically having a double standard, where one criticizes Israel for things that they don't criticize other nations about. They hold them to a different standard. That's anti-Semitism, and it's been widely misinterpreted as trying to silence criticism of Israel, which it's not. Whatever, that's a side point. Let's go on,
etc. So I agree that there's something to debate there, and just how we should bound, the Overton window on that topic. But the fact that Mamdani is just, he's a proud, DSA member, Democratic Socialists of America. They were out on October 8th supporting Hamas, right? I mean, there's just no way that should be possible.
Yeah.
And there's no way that anyone who's got that level of callousness and confusion, confusion being charitable, should be running a major American city, right? Much less being the darling, the poster boy for the future of democratic politics. So yes, he knows exactly how fully the Muslim Brotherhood, through the Council of American Islamic Relations, CAIR in America, has gamed, our politics. There's something very sinister about the way Islamists have spread their ideology through the West and targeted liberals, right? I mean, people whose primary, the center of ethical gravity for them is to never be, quote, racist, right? As though race tracked any kind of criticism of Islam, which of course it doesn't. But that's the notion. It's like, okay, to criticize Islam is to be racist. That's the first piece of confusion. And Islamophobia as a meme is used to silence any criticism of the doctrine of Islam as indistinguishable from just bigotry against Muslims as people, right? And so...
Okay, so this, I think, is the sharpest thing that Harris says in this clip. The Islamophobia meme is a precision instrument, right? It collapses the distinction between criticizing a doctrine and being bigoted against a people, right? Islamophobia, it makes you racist, it makes you bigoted. It's an ideology, it's a set of ideas. And the concept of Islamophobia says that you can't criticize a set of ideas. And why is that bigotry, right? That's a key point that Harris makes, and he's made it many times. Now, once you accept that collapse, that equation of criticizing a set of ideas with criticizing a people, any serious analysis of Islamist political ideology becomes off limits, because you can't criticize this religion, you can't criticize people's faith, which is exactly what the concept of Islamophobia is designed to do. This is a great point by Harris here. But here's what I want to add to it. Harris frames this as manipulation, right? They're smart Islamist operators exploiting the left's fear of being called racist. And yes, that's true. That's happening. That is there. But it works. The reason it works is because of something deeper than just naivete by the left. The left aren't just useful idiots. It works because the progressive left has already accepted a framework in which the only moral categories are oppressor and oppressed. And in that framework, Muslims, as a minority in Western societies, are by definition oppressed. And once you're the oppressed, by definition, your cause is legitimate, because that's the whole moral framework. And then your allies are legitimate. And criticizing your ideology is indistinguishable from attacking you as a people. So that's not necessarily just manipulation. It's what happens when you replace objective good and evil with with power as the measure, oppressor versus oppressed, and how does what this person says make me feel? Think about the honor culture in Islam, and the political correctness is what we used to call it. That culture of anything that's offensive is wrong. It's the same construct, right? You lose the ability to say that two things can be true at once, that there can be people who are oppressed, who are a minority, and their ideology is wrong, right? That framework doesn't have, the framework of the left doesn't have room for both of those statements simultaneously. By being oppressed, your ideology is then protected by the fact that you're oppressed in their worldview. I hope that made sense. So the manipulation works because the framework, it fits the framework. It's not just devious manipulation. It fits the framework of leftist thinking. And that's what Harris is missing. It's not just that bad actors are exploiting good people's confusion. That's how he puts it. It's that the ideology that those good people have adopted has no defense against this kind of exploitation that's built into it. Let's continue a little bit more, and then we'll wrap up.
It's that piece of confusion that's being leveraged. And Mamdani is someone who knows enough about this, right? I mean, both his parents are just up to their eyeballs in this kind of discourse. So he grew up with this. He knows that he's, not saying the quiet part out loud or struggling not to say it out loud. And he knows just how calculated all of this is to confuse people about really what is in fact spreading theocracy.
If you take,
okay, we'll stop it there. We'll leave it. We'll leave it there. So what's the takeaway of all this? So Sam Harris is one of the clearest thinkers engaging with this problem. And he's right about almost everything he says here. Like I said, the alliance is real. Some of it is knowing, some of it's manipulation. The Islamophobia meme is a silencing tool. That's all true. And figures like Mamdani and Hassan Piker and these guys, they're not confused. They know exactly what they're doing. But the explanation he's missing is this. This is why I made this video. The Red-Green Alliance, the alliance between the radical left and the Islamist movements, is not primarily a political convenience. It's the natural convergence of two worldviews that share a common enemy and a common way of thinking about the world. The common enemy is biblical civilization. The civilization built on the idea that human beings have inherent dignity, that good and evil are real, that power is accountable to a moral standard above itself, that no earthly authority and no divine authority claiming earthly power owns you, that you don't have virtue, you're not assumed to be virtuous by the fact that someone is oppressing you. You can still be evil. So both Marxism and political Islam are structured around the rejection of those ideas from opposite directions, using completely different language with completely different ultimate goals, but they're fighting the same thing. And that's why the alliance, this Red-Green Alliance, keeps forming wherever you look. And it goes all the way back. There was, the Soviets and Yasser Arafat and the Muslim Brotherhood actors. I mean, these guys have been in bed with each other all the time. The socialist Marxist left and the Islamist. That's why this alliance formed so easily right after October 7th, within hours of the massacre. That's why it shows up in New York City politics, in the pages of the New York Times, on university campuses across the Western world. That's why it spreads so easily, because it's not a conspiracy. It's not this carefully orchestrated op that's always being run in all these Western cities. It works and it spreads so quickly because it's actually a convergence of two worldviews that fit well together. And understanding the difference between understanding this fact, this analysis, understanding the fact that it's a convergence of overlapping ideologies and not just a marriage of convenience. It helps us respond more intelligently. That's what I wanted to share in this video. Please drop me a comment. I'm not sure I explain things as well as I want to. I'm trying to tease these ideas out. I'm starting to write about them a little bit more. I think this is really important to kind of look under the hood, look more closely at this alliance between the left and Islam, to really fully understand it at a deeper level. So thanks for watching. Please like, share, subscribe, do all that great stuff. Tell people about what we're doing on this channel. Please spread the word. Word of mouth is the only real way things spread. And I'm very grateful to everyone who has spread everything that we're doing on this channel. Make sure that you're subscribed and that you're subscribed to Israel 365 News, because there's a lot of content going up there as well. A lot of my content. And make sure that you watch Shoulder to Shoulder. The Shoulder to Shoulder podcast is now on this channel, but it's also on all the audio platforms. You can find it on Spotify and Stitcher and iTunes and all the rest. Make sure you follow that podcast, and make sure you're subscribed to the newsletters at Israel 365 Action and Israel 365 News. You'll find the link in the description of this video. And yeah, sorry about that. And we'll see you next time. We'll see you on the next episode. God bless.